All right, well, we're right at the top of the hour. So you ready, man? You want to do this?
I'm ready. And
All right.
Mike, you can hear us okay?
I can hear you.
All right,
Perfect.
cool.
I'll have you put your pretty face on here later if you can.
I don't know about, that's a tall order you're asking for already.
All right, well,
What do you
welcome.
ask anyway?
Mike, I'm glad you could join us, man. So we got AI in action. This is number 2, how to advertise smarter with AI. And Kevin, you got the controls, so go ahead and jump us forward. Do some intros here to get us started. So Kevin Myers, I'm going to let you do a personal intro here in a second. But Kevin is working on a fascinating product. So Kevin and I connected probably, like 6 months ago, maybe. I don't know. But, Kevin was really intrigued by what we were doing with the Institute. He had a vision for making, advertising smarter across the spectrum of all the different use cases within it. So he and I have been staying in contact and kind of like, I've been really interested to see this thing develop because we have, personally at the Institute, we have a ton of use cases for this stuff. I owned an agency. I sold my agency last year, but I owned an agency for 16 years. So I had clients thinking about this stuff. So paid advertising has always been a challenge for us. It's like what we always found is if you wanted help, like you needed to spend 10, 20,000 a month or else you couldn't even get professional support for it. And then as an agency, we were like, what do we even do? Like, we don't have the tools and the talent to do this stuff. And so I always saw advertising as just like a area primed for AI to come in and build smarter functions. And so Kevin had that vision from a product standpoint. And so I'm really excited. And then Kevin, I'll let you introduce Mike a little bit too, and kind of give us a preface there. So why don't, Kevin, why don't you take away for a second and just kind of give us an overview, and then I'll, do the intros here, and then we'll jump to this slide.
Okay. So Kevin Myers, I am the Chief Product and Marketing Officer for AI Advertising. With me today is Mike Glazer. And Mike is also a visionary. He's a visionary in curiosity. And I say that because he has been as patient as we have in developing the platform, implementing it. And so we'll talk more about that in a moment with Mike as I go through the platform. I proudly, Paul, call myself a marketing engineer. I have a degree in engineering, but I've pointed it towards sales and marketing most of my career, thinking that I could fix things, I can measure things. Well, I hope you in the audience will see kind of that in full blossom here throughout the webinar today.
And give everybody like 30 seconds on your corporate background too, because I think where you came from helps people understand why you saw an opportunity to build something like this.
So I started my career as an engineer at Frito-Lay. And one of my claims to fame was I made the cheese dry faster on Cheetos. And somewhere down in Plano, Texas, there's a process patent.
Did you have anything to do with the flaming hot Cheetos? Because we got to have a conversation.
Yeah, right. I didn't, there was no flaming hot, but at the time they set loose a bunch of engineers into a plant. And they said, go figure stuff out. And it's brilliant because you just go out and observe and measure and try to remember the stuff you learned in school. And in this case, I figured out how to make the cheese dry faster on Cheetos. I can't keep it off your fingers. I'm sorry, but at least it dried faster.
Just
and saved.
Pour the bag in your mouth. That's my strategy.
That's right. So, but I found out I liked people more than being stuck in a factory. So I moved into sales. Spent a career in sales and healthcare. And then from there, got into tech. I was fortunate enough to work for a big healthcare company that realized tech was the way to sell. And that kind of started my career in technology. So I grew up in the very beginning of the CRM world, back when there's a product called Act that was a contact manager.
Remember Act?
The guy that started Act bought my company and we started in CRM. Right through to where this little ankle biter by the name of Mark Benioff said, hey, you could do this on the cloud. And we all laughed. Well, I think he's chuckling these days. After the .com implosion and my run there, I became a CMO for software companies, for Cold Stone Creamery, Donato's, worked with DirecTV in that capacity. And all of that was just a place to perfect. Did I believe that tech could differentiate marketing? Yes, but how about advertising? That's a longer putt. So I've spent probably the last 4 to 5 years working within brands to try to figure that out. And so I've been fortunate enough to be in and around technology, knowing the importance of sales. But, being an engineer, I'm finally kind of delivering to the market. We are a platform that will help people connect these dots that we don't think have been connected before.
So coming from the background of you've had the media budget to spend and had to manage this and seen what it's like and trying to build a better way. So that's awesome. And then you want to give us a little background on Mike, who's going to hopefully join us a little later on.
Yeah, I'll bounce back to Mike because I got a nice fun intro for him.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll save that.
Kind of set the stage, yes.
All right, so if you're just joining us as your first time, this is the AI in Action Week. We've got 4 sessions. Yesterday, we had Jeff Quill from Market Muse talking about content strategy and content production. Today, obviously, we got AI advertising. Tomorrow, personalized email newsletters with Rasa.io, really cool use case. We're going to get to see that tech at work. And then Kathy and Mike from our team on Thursday are going to do a hands-on with AI tech that we're using at the Institute, give you a few examples and kind of walk you through exactly how we use it, show you how we write a blog post, for example, with AI. So Kathy and our team's here on the chat. If you need her, technical support, I'll be monitoring Q&A and chat as we're going. I'm also going to hang out with Kevin and kind of, maybe pepper him with a few questions as we're going. And then we will have on demand for this one as well as all the other ones this week. So if you signed up for them, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, you will get on demand access to everything. And then I think I have one more slide, a big plug for our Marketing AI conference in August. We are going to be back in human form together, which I cannot express to you how excited I am for that moment. So after 2 years away, we're going to be back in Cleveland, Ohio at the convention center right on the lake. The area right over the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Cleveland Browns Stadium, right on the lakefront, beautiful spot. So hope people can join us. Would love to actually see people from this community together. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Kevin and let him do his thing.
Paul, I like that, more intelligence, more human, because as I think about introducing the platform to the audience here, and as importantly, to Mike Cole-Glazer and Whole Cat and their practical application of it, that's AI in action, right? I mean, I can sit here and develop a platform, but until a client sees the benefit of it, there is no action. We believe, you asked me, Paul, it's like, what was the vision for this? And, if I could hang my hat on one thing, it would be 2 words with a symbol in between. And it's similar to what you talk about, but it's marketer plus machine. And you said more human. I will tell you that as much as you talk about AI, there are some people that get anxious about it. They get worried about, is this going to replace the person? Is this going to replace the marketer? Absolutely not. I mean, it makes us more valuable, more intelligent. So that little byline you have of more intelligence, more human, I think couldn't be more perfect way to think about applying AI to kind of advertising. Because as Paul and I were just wrapping as this got started, we were, growing up in the CRM world, there's been a lot of great automation in and around sales, in and around people, process, and technology. And then you get into a business and it's the CMO that I don't think has a platform per se. And the vision for this was born out of, some personal strife. What is the average shelf life of a CMO, Paul?
It was about 2 years, two and a half.
2 years. Yeah, it bounces below and above 24 months. So as I've been able to work with plenty of marketing leaders and CMOs, it kept resonating back to this saying, and by the way, it's a saying from 130 years ago, half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know what half. I thought that was a Madison Avenue comment.
I don't know who we can attribute it to, but I know we've all heard it.
John Wanamaker.
Oh, is that right?
So think about the Wanamaker effect as we go forward. John Wanamaker was the pioneer in advertising. He had the first retail store that eventually became Macy's. Okay. So 130 years ago, John doesn't know what to do with this. And 130 years later, we still can't measure it. That's where myself and the team at AI Advertising said, kind of enough.
Yeah.
There's enough for us to go ahead and build a platform so that we know what works, what doesn't, and what's next. So, we kind of think that that's going to be the byproduct of the use of something like this. And quite frankly, Paul, the other client or partners you have in the Institute, more is more. All of us together make our clients better.
Yep.
So as I introduce Mike and Mike will come alongside me, we were fortunate enough to go to the Caterpillar dealer event. And we were thinking about, how is it that we get people's attention? And hopefully people remember the ad campaign, Be Like Mike, but in this case, it isn't Michael Jordan, it's Mike Cole Glazer and the entire team at Whole Cat. Because 2 years ago, we started working with them. And then in the last 18 months, we got into the platform. And in the last 6 months, they've been seeing the results of AI applied to advertising to figure out what works, what doesn't, and what's next. So for as long as I can continue to serve Mike and his team, we'll be using the Be Like Mike. And Mike, why don't you kind of say hello to the group here, and then I'll bounce into the platform, take them on a tour, and then you and I can have a couple questions and answers that we think is kind of applicable for AI in action.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I think I told Colleen that they were crazy or desperate. I can't remember which one, but anyway, very flattering, but I don't deserve as much credit as the campaign is there, but it has allowed us to demonstrate and show for our organization. We made leaps and bounds progress, and we're continuing to do so. It's really put us on a good glide path. And so looking forward to kind of talking through this a bit.
And for everybody who doesn't know Whole Cat, give us a quick overview of what Whole Cat does. What's the business model?
So at Whole Cat, we're a Texas base, or our territory is completely within Texas. So we're a Caterpillar dealer. Okay. We actually happen to be the largest U.S. Caterpillar dealer, and we're like the third largest maybe in the world. And so we're very blessed to be in Texas. That says a lot about that. But we obviously serve, service, sell Caterpillar equipment, machines, parts and service, the whole Megillah, as I like to say. But we have other divisions within it. We have Holt Truck Centers. Caterpillar used to be in the truck business, but we've continued to want to be in the truck business. So we're expanding and we're acquiring some companies in that space. We have a rental division that, again, focuses on cat equipment, but we also get into the aerial products and other lineups. So I would say Whole Cat, is a large industrial company, and that's where our focuses are, regardless of the equipment type. That's our space, and we continue to look in the expansion. We're even looking in areas like Holt Renewables, which we're getting into that space, and that's an industrial application, but obviously in the greener, So.
Which is awesome. And I think, Kevin, like one of the cool things, like I think a lot of us can think about B2C advertising and it's like almost obvious, like the application, but to have a B2B example is really cool, because I think a lot of people beyond this call are probably B2B, and it's maybe not always as obvious, the application. So this is cool.
Yeah, you can often align the impressions to revenue easier, but people still struggle in B2C. But in B2B, in bumps a lot more human beings and CRM and other applications that you've got to get all the signals from all of them. So when I met Mike, it was one of the leaders at Whole Cat said, "You can't take impressions to the bank, Mike." Where's the revenue? And so thus began the journey to not only apply this to selling skid steers and backhoes and bulldozers, but also you'll see in a moment helping find individuals that are going to come work for the organization, because you have to advertise to go find people as well as sell skid steers and backhoes. So I'll just hop over here and orient the group with the platform. So this is the AI ad platform. And you'll see on the left, we've got, the organization, and I'm going to take you on a mini tour of Whole Cat. There's a lot here, and I'll skim through it. But for anybody who has questions, we've got we call it from cats to cookies. I've got a cookie example as well.
Hey, Kev, if you want to hit the green circle in the top left, then we'll go full screen on your browser. There we go. Cleaner view for everybody.
Yes. Thanks for the assist, Paul.
Yeah.
So here is the, from the organization perspective, we've onboarded dozens of clients, and but within a client, you also have to consider that they've got a lot of different initiatives. So with HoldCat, not only we started actually helping them find people for tech recruitment. And I think everybody on this call understands that finding people is as big, if not a bigger challenge than selling your products and services. So we spent some time helping them do that. But we actually had our biggest success within the return on ad spend that we saw within the BCP line of business. And we'll talk about how this will extend in the Q&A part to parts and services, generators, other elements of the business. But I really kind of want to start with, beginning with the end in mind, which is what our platform's meant to do. So on the left-hand side, if we're not aligned with a client's business goals and KPIs, then we've already started on the wrong step. So here is where we go ahead and we use what we call a sales configurator to make sure that we're answering a lot of questions about their value proposition and their brand. But the most important one is, are they looking for return on ad spend? Or is driving the price to leads down? Or is it, acquiring new clients? And as I drag these around in the background, we got the widgets being set up in the performance area for creating dashboards. So this is the bookends of the platform. Get alignment with what's most important for HoldCat, and then make sure you're developing dashboards to show them, back to John Wanamaker's, what's being wasted, what's not. So if I hang my hat on anything, Paul, it's what works, what doesn't, what's next against these KPIs.
Yeah. Which any strategist knows how critical that is, obviously.
That's exactly right. So, and then the next big hurdle, oh my gosh, how many different places do we keep customer information? I've read stats that a company can have 100 up to 150 different places where customer client information is buried. And you can think about desktops and spreadsheets and phones in that conversation. Of course, CRM in the upper left is meant to kind of bring that all together. Doesn't always happen, but in this case, HoldCat had a couple of CRM packages, both Salesforce in some of the divisions and SalesLink in others. Well, you got two different big silos of information. You got to bring it together in one place. Then there's phone calls and live chat and Facebook and Google Ads. And there's other places where we're onboarding to where the ads are running, to where then connect the dots to where the revenue is happening. So inside there, I don't want to get too geeky, Paul, we'll come back, but if you can picture these tiles flowing into a big data lake that we then give what we call a tagging and a taxonomy, so that we know what are the most important things to measure.
Let's linger there for a second, Kevin, because I think data lake may be a foreign concept to some people, and the importance of data to power the AI. So if you just take a moment and kind of explain what is a data lake at a real high level, and then why is a data lake so critical for AI to be able to make advertising smarter?
Yeah, so picture kind of these 6 systems with many tables and rows, a lot of data flowing together. In the background, the data lake is a place where the marketer can begin to start telling it, group these things together. So what are the correlations between an advertising unit, its intended goal, where am I running it, where did the person go when they clicked on my website? Once they filled out a form, did it get to a human being or get to an online e-commerce shopping cart? So what I just expressed, Paul, was a lot of different systems that aren't talking to each other. A data lake is a place where all of that data flows together, so that you can make the correlations. And you're going to see in a second here that we're talking about trillions of different data points. And I'll show you the math that human beings can't do this unless they've got years. So that when you hear data lake, think this is where the AI needs to live, because it's the power of connecting those dots that becomes possible when you put things in one place. One last point before I go on to the first thing we do is, from this massive amount of data, we're moving it into a kind of a place where we can begin not only correlating to the way human beings behave and think, but also how I measure it on the other end. So all of this data flowing, the first thing we do is we say, what's that going to look like, so that I can find about all the people and the companies and how do they segment. This is what Holtcat's data looks like to a data scientist. So this isn't what a marketer wants to look at, but I want to draw your attention to these little boxes up above. All of that data flowing is across, in one business line, 28,000 contacts, nearly 6,000 companies. On the right-hand side, over 1 million different models that are used in part, that equals the equivalent of nearly 40,000 man hours. This happens in a couple days. So when I onboard all that data, we start getting these signals and kind of persuasion tactics. And how can I find somebody if I was thinking about crossing the chasm? You know, are they an innovator, early adopter, late adopter? How about if I get into kind of psychographic or demographic information? All of this data flows in so that when we talk to Mike, we delivered to them these 4 personas for people that are likely to buy a skid steer or a backhoe. Now, if I were to go up into another workspace, you'd have different personas for whenever they are going to go do tech recruitment or sell generators. So that's back up into here, but I'm not going to drill there. But if you go into Motivated Mike, from all that data, I get a narrative of around, what does Mike look like? What is the strength of score across all of their customers on how many people are like Mike? And a little nod to be like Mike again. What might be the products they prefer, their age, their gender. So beyond here, we get into kind of psychographic information that we start using to develop creative. So the path here is from KPI to massive amount of data to drive in the personification of an individual. And then we'll get into kind of now, how do we go ahead and make creative from that? So Paul, move on, or any questions?
Yeah, no, I think
there?
it's great. And just again, for everybody, reinforcement. So what he's saying is, like, you've got your data sitting there. What AI accelerates at is things like pattern recognition and clustering data points together. So he just showed, you know, again, if you've ever built a persona, you realize, like, oh my gosh, I never even fathomed bringing that in. Maybe you went to LinkedIn and pulled some profiles, or you did some basic research and you build a brief that says, you know, they look like this and they think like this, and here's what we think they might be interested in. But when you have, you know, potentially millions of data points that you can use to enrich those personas, where the machine is finding correlations and clusters and like grouping things and then being able to make recommendations, it's just something that doesn't happen without it. We didn't replace the person who built the persona. You just gave the person who builds the persona a wealth of information they didn't have before to do their job.
That's right.
I would inject here that this is the merger of B2C and B2B, and the rich attributes are in the B2C space, but we're in a B2B business, right? And so being able to identify those attributes around these personas, and knowing, again, as a large industrial company, that our business is becoming more retail oriented, and that's where they're living, that's where they're getting their information and consuming. And so in order to be able to play better, we needed this help. And that's what the persona developed allowed us to do. But the rich attributes are in the B2C space and connecting those dots. So.
And Mike, thanks, because the element I think people forget is that B2B, B2B2C, B2C, business to consumer, business to business, guess what's involved in all of them? Human beings. Human
Right.
beings. and human beings that have behaviors and interest. And here's the thing is that every single day we throw off signals, and that can be measured and that can be grouped. And so that's when Mike says we're taking these B2C ideas, you absolutely can deliver them to a B2B business because there's human beings in it that are buying. So what we then move to is how do we take all the content? So it probably isn't lost on anybody that, there's a lot of creative content in the business, and Whole-Cat was no exception. But then how do I onboard not only all their customer data, but all the content so that I can see kind of what are dominant colors? Is there people in it? What's the orientation? And remember where I said you got to start giving a taxonomy and tag? Here you see some tags that the AI picked up just by onboarding that asset and bringing it in. So if there were people or groups of people or faces, you'd see those tags here. And it's as important to tag your customers as it is to tag your creative. So why? It's so that you can go in and analyze what's working, what's not. So here you see the application that is actually looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats against that same creative that we're running online. And it'll drill all the way down in to show kind of what is the most popular ad unit, what are the metrics around it. But remember when I said I care about the orientation, the words, the people, all of this can be measured now. So we're beginning to build a profile in and around what assets does Whole-Cat have, what is working and resonating as you run it. And then you'll get into kind of predicting, what's next, kind of what colors, use of sentiment, emojis, body copy. So that moves you over kind of into kind of elements that you can predict. So I'll go down into kind of a recruitment campaign and just look at the elements of ad units that were developed for hiring. So this isn't for selling skid steers or backhoes, but what's most likely to resonate. So you onboard assets, you analyze what works, you predict what's next, and then you can optimize and execute these immediately. So what this looks like in our platform as an end result is what's working for Adam, what's working for Sam, those personas. Here you see an example on the top, but more importantly, what's next? Here's a piece of creative, and here's some suggested creative that I can run against it. So Paul, I'll take another little time out here to see if you or Mike have anything to add, but we've gone from your KPI to the data that will tell us insights on behaviors to then develop the creative that will most likely resonate with them and start to figure out which one's working and which one's not.
Yeah, the thing I would just say is for people who've attended webinars before with us or heard me talk about different use cases for AI, we always talk about narrow applications that you often have to find specific tools built to do very specific things. And what we've lacked in the industry, generally speaking, is platforms combining a bunch of use cases together to solve for larger goals. And I think this has been a great example so far of the different ways AI is infused throughout all these individual use cases. Like go back to the tagging of images, functions like your iPhone or Google Pixel does the same thing. AWS, they use image recognition, a form of vision AI, to recognize objects and things within photos, and then a natural language generation tool that can actually tag the tool. So there's all these interesting uses of AI that are enabling each of these individual use cases to create a platform solution where you start with a goal and it actually is working you through making predictions at each step. So just to kind of, again, unpack what's happening here for people, if it's one of your first times like really looking at this stuff.
It's Paul, it's said that your creative starts to stale out at 10.4 days. This is like a Google stat, right? That means for any marketer on the 11th day and beyond, you're getting a little bit worse.
So running the same ad that worked last year isn't recommended.
Right. Well, and let's at least get to kind of monthly updating things. But this is to say, if that's true, you need a platform that's always looking to iterate, always looking to say what's next, and do it based off of what worked and what didn't. So that's, as Mike knows, we have Motivated Mike and Direct Danny are the two personas that are working best for us in selling skid steers and backhoes. Now, do we double down on those, or do we figure out what's not working on the others? A little bit of both, but the platform's got to make sure that that happens. So from this in the platform, now I got to go do some media buying. And so what we do is we say, here are the audiences that we have created, and they're based off of either CRM or lookalike audiences. So in this case, I've got 6 different CRM audiences off of those 4 personas that I showed you. And when you select one of them, what it allows you to do is to upload it into Google, Facebook, or a Trade Desk or Stackit app. So what you're doing when you're taking that is I'm grabbing the audience, I'm grabbing the creative, and I can programmatically activate it. So the next element of our platform is, kind of in what campaign am I running? So we've got kind of a portfolio of different campaigns that Holt Cat has run. And so whether you're drilling into the individual campaign or looking at a project plan or a calendarization, we want this to be the CMO platform that will show them exactly what's running, because this is the end game. You get into, I dragged ROAS to the top, and that was one of the challenges that Mike and the team had for us. And generally speaking, people do a lot of kind of ad performance. This was all the clicks that Mike said I can't take to the bank. So it's important. These are leading indicators as to what's happening with my ads. But what you really want to get to is, what's the current ROAS? What's the return on ad spend on nearly $400,000, not only in sales, but in pipeline development? So this is a dashboard that Mike challenges us every day to evolve. We've been between 9 and 14 times return on ad spend. And this is so that he can sit with the rest of the team and say, how are we doing?
What is a target ad spend, just for people who don't spend their life doing this stuff? Like, what should they be looking at for return on ad spend?
Look, I think if you spend $1 and make 3, that's pretty good.
Usually.
So generally speaking, that doesn't include margin.
Yeah.
That doesn't include lifetime value. So a lot of what we saw with Mike and team was, while the return on ad spend was big, it was probably even more interesting what was happening with the pipeline. So the pipeline was building, the stores, the salespeople had more things to work on, and we had to connect those dots. So I said that what we do is really built in and around personas. And I even talked about that Direct Danny and Motivated Mike were performing better. Well, in this case, you can see exactly how much better they're doing than Leader Larry and Supporter Sam. You can look at the metrics above and see kind of what part of the country is working, and by persona, how is it working, drilling into a heat map if you want. But these are the dashboards that we end up developing and iterating on based off of when Mike goes back to his team, the sales team, the management team, and says, here's what we're doing. And then really the next question is, all right, great, what's next? So that's the loose tour. And in back, I'll just kind of leave this on the home screen as I kind of bring Mike into the conversation, and Mike and Paul ask him some questions. Yeah. What's the dashboard look like for what individual unit? So I could go into any one of these units and I can say, how many is all my data connected? How many campaigns am I running? How many are active? What's my average ROAS? What are the active campaigns, the best ad units? What channels working? What personas working? And what are the leading assets? This too is customizable in our platform based off of what's most important to Mike and his team. So Paul, before I ask some questions of Mike, did you have anything that you wanted me to kind of review or bounce back to?
No, tell everybody that's on. I mean, go ahead and get your questions fired up, in the chat or put them in the Q&A, and we'll answer. I've got a bunch myself, honestly. I mean, it's so fascinating. I've been monitoring this space obviously for years, and we've looked at some AI tech and ad, but again, it's been one-off, and so trying to even wrap my mind around the ability to have a platform to pull all these use cases together. It's pretty fascinating. So no, I'm gonna sit back and let you talk to Mike a little bit, because I have a bunch of questions for Mike too, but I don't want to like jump in and ask the things you're gonna ask Mike already. So no, this is great. Keep doing your thing, and everybody else get your questions ready.
So Mike, I talked about your experience on you can't take impressions to the bank. Could you, for the audience, just while this is a platform and it gets better every day, can you kind of share what this has meant for the dialogue that you've had with, that Grand Canyon of rift that often exists between sales and marketing?
Yeah, sure. And I would say, I mean, I'm an advertising agency guy of past also. I've been with a lot of agencies over the years, and I've got a lot of track marks on my back, because of that. And it comes from that question of like, well, is it working? Show me, tell me, is it really working? And so then when you get on the on the client side, especially in a large industrial company that we're not the early adopters when it comes to technology, we talk to our leadership over many years. Again, and typical ad guy coming in saying, look, we can do all this stuff. We need to advertise and we need to put it out there. And then said, well, show me. And I was like, well, here are all the impressions. And then we correlate to sales, right? And that's where the whole joke about, hey, can I deposit those impressions in the bank? And they kind of laughed me out of the room a lot. And so in the process of connecting with AI, and again, we started with the technician recruitment and the profiling, and basically taking our existing people data, whether it's our technician recruiting or our customer data, and then began appending, consumer attributes so we can identify them out there where they're actually living, and you learn more about them, what their habits are and what they want to do and how they gather their information and stuff. And then the biggest part was connect it to our sales data. So connect it to our CRM. Even if you have a CRM that may not be the best in the world, but you're still able to do that. And that's the game changer for us and where we're evolving to. We're not perfect. We're not there entirely yet, but directionally we're going in the right way. And in our leadership, we're able to demonstrate and show that for them. So, and we're also, the big part, I was talking with Kevin about this yesterday, is that we know that our sales teams, they're out there doing their business, but the last thing they want to do is sometimes the paperwork, the administrative piece. They want to be out selling, right? But this gives us the tool to get with their leadership and say, look, we only got part of the data. So we create leads, and we have a few guys that follow the sales funnel process very well. We have a lot of them that don't. We have a lot of them that will cut to the lead and go straight to quote, and they break the lead in a sense in the system. And unfortunately, we have a system that allows that, but that's the way it is. And so we're able to tell leadership that we don't have all the data, but if we can get better at getting more of your data from the sales team and them following the lead funnel, the sales funnel, lead funnel process better, so therefore we can show them the gaps and say, look, here's the data that we actually do have, and this is what we can tell you about it and what it did for us. Just imagine if we had all of the data or more of the data from the sales guys and they were doing the process well. So it gives us a hammer or a velvet hammer that we've not had before to kind of convince them that, hey, do your part in this so that we can actually win. Because ultimately, the win is our sales guys love leads. They want to chase deals that they can close more. So if we can get better at that and they can help us get there, they win and we win. And we win as a company because we're going to be more successful and we're going to grab more market share. So
I think, Mike, real quick, if I could just add on there, like one of the key things you just noted is the salespeople don't care that you're using AI. Like, and this is something we always tell people, like, it's not about the AI, it's about smarter tech and smarter processes. And all they care about is, am I going to close more deals? Great. Right. I don't care how you're doing it. Just get me more workable deals.
Right. And I'm in the position of trying to convince them to give me more money to spend to create more leads. But then it always comes with the conversation. Tell me what it's doing. Tell me that the money I'm spending is working. And so until now, all we could do is provide, the clicks and the impressions and things like that. And then we would try to correlate to sales activity. And so now, because of using tech to connect the intricacies of data that we can't do with our human eye and our human fingers, and the key part also is that we have guys that do deals, and Kevin and I have talked about this too, and we're working on this, is identifying the people that we know we don't have the sales lead data, but we did a deal with them. Can we flow it back and see where we actually connected with them and we created impressions? Because we know in our hearts that our advertising is creating actions and activity. We just can't prove it. Now we're able to, through this data connection opportunity through AI, is even build up that story that we've not been able to do before.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions. Do you want to take a question? We come back and ask Mike some more. You want to tackle a couple of these?
Yeah.
So I got one that says, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make one point, and then you go to the question, Paul, is that, I want to make sure everybody doesn't miss the fact that the data exposed gaps. Okay, the action is the visualization of the gap. So Mike is seeing gaps in the sales process. There's a quote that I love. It's from my brother, and your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant. Your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant. Bring data to the battle. Bring insights to the conversation. And that's what Mike's being able to do with others in the organization. He's showing the gaps. He's not bringing his opinion. And that's what we as marketers far too often do. We bring our opinions and not data. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, it was good. And also, Mike, just thank you for allowing Kevin and his team to show this. I mean, it's so hard. Trust me, for years, you were trying to find the success stories of AI. And I understand you're just at the early stages of proving this out. But to get companies that are willing to move the industry forward by sharing what they're doing and what's going on, I mean, I think it's valuable for all of us. So thank you, before I get into the next question, for being a part of it and sharing it. Okay, so how does the platform interact with a CDP or DMP, customer data platform, or what's DMP stand for, Kevin?
What's that?
Data management platform.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What will be the value of those while using the AI platform? So does it interact with them, and what's the value in those two in relation to the platform?
So CDPs, like a snowflake.
Yep.
That might be just another one of these tiles.
Okay. And
we can connect to it. A DMP, where I'm going to go activate, that's where I'm sending things to. So we've got connectors on the way in and the way out. So on the way in, I get all the data from the CDP or any of these systems. There's 150 below the fold here. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we do our magic, our AI magic, and then we onboard. So we connect to the places where you activate the advertising, but it's a two-way street when we connect, because I'm not only putting the ad in, I'm getting the metrics out.
Right.
Because down in the metrics here, in the regular dashboard, over on the right here, these are the metrics that you got to also fold together for ad performance. So that's where we're connecting both ways, Paul.
All right, and then we get, I like this question a lot from Chris. So how effective is AI in the early months? You know, we can be specific to hold or just in general. Did it take a long time for the algorithms to learn before the return on ad spend improved? And this is again, a broader, you can answer specific to your platform, but this is a broader question. Chris is asking a really good, from a perspective here that's valuable for everybody else. AI isn't out of the box going to intelligently automate everything you're doing. There is training, there is human in the loop, there is constant learning and improvement. So Kevin, why don't you talk about the role of not only the human in the loop, but how much like efficiency might gain early, and then how that evolves over time as the AI gets smarter.
All right, so I'm grinning because I've got some folks in the room here that laugh at me on the use of these words, but our version of AI, we believe is accretive, not creative, accretive, meaning it's adding to, making it better, and iterative. AI, accretive, and iterative, because it isn't a guarantee. People want AI to be artificial intelligence to guarantee me the answer. Not going to happen. Well, I don't think for a while, maybe back into that quantum physics or quantum computing. But the point is that it absolutely is a platform that's made for you to get a little better every single time, made for you to get a little bit smarter every single time. So you accretively get better and you iterate. Now, there are wins immediately. Within a week to 10 days, we come back and show you your data personified. It wasn't that long ago that took 3 months and a lot of surveys and data models and everything else, but developing personas in days is a big win for any organization. Predicting creative in another couple weeks, big win for any organization, but it's not the end game. And Mike, maybe you could add to that, is that we weekly go through this, Paul, but Mike and his team have got to say, okay, but what's next?
Well, I like that question too, because the one that was asked earlier, Paul, was that, what is a good ROAS, right? Yeah. And I would say that we don't know that yet, because as to Kevin's point, and I was making it as well, is that we have data gaps. And so until we get more of the data, the transactional data, and again, this is the biggest change of anything that we've done, is connecting our transactional sales data with the advertising analytics data. And you see how robust they're able to bring in down to the actual ad unit and the color and all the different aspects of that. But just connecting it to the actual transactional sales data is a huge deal. And so then again, raising the gap question, getting and improving their throughput, we call it sales management process. It allows us to bring in the accountability measures. We love, we want commitment by our sales teams, but we'll stand, we'll be glad to have, conformity or, basically conformity in the beginning. But ultimately we want commitment because they can see the results, because they're getting the support that they want. And we're also able to prove and demonstrate that what we're doing is working.
We've got a question from Gordon I want to get to. It gets specifically into the dealer distributor network, and I think it's a really good question. But I want to ask one other one, Kevin, first is, so if I'm sitting here, I'm a small business, I'm me, I run an event, I got online education, like I got things to drive action and demand for, or maybe I'm a big enterprise. Like, what is the minimum either ad spend or data? Like, how do you think about what this platform being a fit for someone? Is it minimum ad spend to be able to learn enough to make this viable?
There's another truth about AI: more is more. Yeah. And the more data you have, the more likely you are to see signals through the noise. So what's that mean to an ad spend? We recommend that if somebody's spending at least $20,000 a month in digital advertising, they're a good fit for this. Okay. If they've got a system that has thousands of customers, not hundreds of thousands or millions, thousands of customers, they're a good fit for this. Paul, this system will work below that, but then somebody's got to be more patient. Then they got to wait to 6 months, 9 months, a year to start seeing what Mike has seen month to month, because they're spending more, they're creating more signals. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, what I'll tell people again, like the whole idea here is introduce you to all the different ways, or at least a good collection of ways AI can be applied to advertising. Now, if a platform like this isn't what you need, you're a small business, you got $3,000 a month to spend, you can go find individual use cases. Like, okay, let me go find a GPT-3 powered tool that can draft ad copy for me, help me with my creative, or a computer vision tool that can help me with what images to use. Like, you might be able to piece some things together to drive some incremental efficiencies within use cases. So just because you don't have 20,000 to spend doesn't mean, oh, this webinar is a waste, I can't do anything with this. Like, no, this just introduces you to a whole collection of use cases.
Paul, it's our vision to kind of come alongside you. Yeah. And for point solutions, Persado, others that might be doing something individually on copy, yeah, and giving a better subject line and try to make this a little bit of a Chinese menu, that if that's all somebody could get or could afford is improving their copy, I want to be there for them and then show them a platform that expands.
Yep.
So I'm glad you brought that up. We're kind of aligned at the hip with you to say, allow people to get point solutions, but when it comes time to pull it all together, we hope that we're that one solution.
Yep. All right. So the question we got okay. So for distributor network, this again comes from Gordon. Distributor network like CAT, does the scale seamlessly across the dealer network, or is this considered proprietary, as the individual dealers might compete on the fringes? For any manufacturer who deals with a distributor network, can the manufacturer be the primary platform that have individual dealers tied in with their territory or geography? So Kevin, this is probably more of a product question for you and how you would envision that, but I'll let you interpret that.
Yeah, I guess there's two answers to that, and I'll let Mike answer the second part. That of course there's layover between, does somebody live in Oklahoma that might buy from Whole Cat in Texas? We're seeing activity outside their trade area, but Mike has been kind of talking to all the dealers saying, you guys all ought to get on board. So because again, more is more. If all of the CAT dealers join this, we got more signals, we can find these people better. And I'll plant a seed as I turn it over to Mike, because it also gives that fuel to think about, what can I cross-sell, upsell? And in the case of the portfolio, Whole Cat has Texas First Rentals. They have, as I mentioned up here, they're doing parts and services. They're doing generators. So where's the cross-sell, upsell to within their own portfolio that is a result of sharing this data across business units? Now, Mike, maybe you can comment on, I don't know that we felt any friction or heard any friction as you go into, kind of trade area to trade area. Any comment there?
Yeah, I would say, so in the distributor network, so we're a CAT licensed supplier, and we have 118 counties in Texas. So we're limited to sell or service our products, and then another dealer has an adjoining territory. We can't infringe upon each other in that regards. So, and we're also within the CAT dealer network, Whole or another CAT dealer are wholly separate, independently owned companies. And we have a distributor agreement with Caterpillar. And so that's where you talk about, is there scalability? There's been some thought around that. How does that happen? But to develop the personas, you have to look at it at the individual basis, because at the end of the day, Whole owns our customers, Warren Cat owns their customers, and so on and so forth. And so when you develop, now, could we say, and there's been some conversations with Kevin, and he's been having conversations with a few other dealers that have expressed interest, having been exposed to what we're doing. How do they develop their own personas? Or, hey, is there a conversation later and down the road with that, how we can work a deal where we create personas, but they could be maybe, lack of better words, nationalized. So we're not there. We're not having any conversations to that degree at all. It's right now. It's on an individual dealer basis. We're the ones that put our toe in it, and that's not always something that we do at Whole. We're not. We're definitely innovative, but we're not always the first. But this was a good opportunity for us, so we're going there. And so it's about our data, our customers, and that's where our focus lies. But we also are big believers in sharing with our dealer friends and Caterpillar, because they're a great partner. And we'll entertain those scalability opportunities if we can, because at the end of the day, we want more customers buying CAT product regardless of where they live, because we want that product market share to continue to grow, because we think it's the best product. So. And
the part that Mike's being kind, because he has collaborated with Caterpillar, and there are conversations of, how might they take these personas to other areas, because there's regional biases. I can assure you, people down in Dallas that love the Cowboys don't feel and think the same way they do in Kansas City that love the Chiefs. So, and sports is a thing. So there's There's the global behaviors of why they buy from Caterpillar, and then there's the regional interests they have that we think we can really refine, kind of from Mike saying from national to local. And that's where the future collaboration we think exists. And Holt won an award, by the way, from all of Caterpillar, thanking them for being the leader in helping the other dealers.
Well, and I would add to your point. I mean, we have a big territory. I mean, that's why one of the reasons, we're very successful and feel very blessed. But we do have the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And through the AI platform, it's giving us good information and intelligence about the nuances and the difference that we're seeing in response to our ads, like the performance of Motivated Mike or Danny varies from Dallas-Fort Worth, say, to San Antonio, where our headquarters is. Danny, I think, performs a little bit stronger in our southern part of Texas versus up in the northern part in the Dallas-Fort Worth market.
We're coming up on the top of the hours. I want to ask one more question. I'll give you kind of both the chance to answer this one. So start with you, Mike. We talked up front, Kevin kind of lingered on the more intelligent, more human thing, the human plus machine idea. How is this technology, this smarter tech powered by AI, how is it changing your day-to-day role? What is it enabling you to maybe do you didn't have time to do before? What is it giving you maybe that the tech you were using before wasn't? So how is it evolving your role as a marketer, as an advertiser, as a leader?
I would say from a day-to-day standpoint, to me, I don't look at it day-to-day. I look at it as an industrial company, we have had a lot of, how do you say, marketing. We don't always get our full due, I think, in conversations around what we can do to help support the organization. Yeah. And it's allowed us to have a seat at the table that what we are doing, and it's giving us more resources. So resources in the form of budgets to run more media than we've ever been able to do in the past. Adding resources within our people space. We're adding additional headcount where we've not been able to do. Some of it has to do with some of our expansion, but a lot of it has to do with the abilities that we're able to demonstrate that we weren't able to before. So how does it affect my day-to-day? We're able to accomplish more. We're able to run more campaigns parallel with not as much lifting, quicker, faster, better, and with better information.
And Kevin, just take a minute. The vision for the more human side, like what by the smarter the tech gets, what does the human do more of? Like where does that time get reinvested for you as you think about the platform and what it opens up in the future?
The marketer plus machine in our vernacular is that our creatives are able to be more creative because the creative brief is smarter. Whether or not that's people within the client, an agency, or the boutique agency we have, the creatives are armed with not opinions, but with data. Yeah. Now go be creative. The marketers, when they come up with campaigns, have more data to say what's working and what's next. So I think that's the key for this. And I don't want to leave this without saying also thank you to Mike. Thank you to everybody at Whole Cat, because, the best AI in action is finding out what a client's doing. And in this case, over 18 months to become a better marketer.
This has been fantastic. Exactly what we envisioned with this series. So Kevin, thank you to you and your team for great presentation. And Mike, again, just like awesome that your team's willing to share this stuff. I think it'll go a long way in educating, the industry about what's possible. So we really appreciate both of you and everybody who joined us today. We had incredible attendance. There was, hundreds of people registered, almost 100 attended, like just fantastic attendance rate. And so, yeah, we'll get this information to everybody. It will be available on demand. Thank you again. We got tomorrow's smart newsletters. So if you want to join us tomorrow and talk about RASA, and we will send more information to you about Kevin and his team in AI advertising. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. Kevin, let's do it again sometime, man.
Thanks for including me.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you.